Where's your submarine?
Hi, everybody. It's Plastic EP here from Melbourne, Australia. And Cathy CC Carlson coming in from Arizona, isn't it, Cathy?
It's New Mexico, but that's okay.
New Mexico, but don't worry about it. We've got a very special VIP guest with us today. We've got Terry Draper. Where are you coming in from, Terry?
Actually, I'm from Toronto, but we winter in Florida because the weather in Toronto is inclement at this time of year. So we're just outside of Clearwater, Florida at Indian Rocks Beach.
Well, it's a pleasure having you on the show here on GEMSTARS. We're going to tell everybody your claim to fame shortly. She's my kind of girl. She's my kind of girl. Soon you'll be close to me, 'cause you mean the most to me. You're my kind of girl. Yes, you're my kind of girl. Yep, we've got Terry. He's in that fantastic band, KLAATU. I bought the album when it first came out. Let me tell you, everyone thought it was the Beatles. We'll get into that. And you're a drummer for KLAATU, but let me tell you, you know what blows my mind, Terry? That you co-wrote the song Calling Occupants of Interplanetary Craft that was covered by the Carpenters. I mean, how big was that?
Well, that's, having Karen Carpenter sing your song, that's as good as it gets in the music business, at least for me. That's the highlight of my musical life, no doubt about it.
I totally agree. Can I find out how she actually came to record the song? Could you tell us that story first?
Well, it's as it was told to me, their guitar player, Tony Pelosi, brought them our record while we were still unknown and everybody was postulating that we could be the Beatles. Richard Carpenter is said to have alluded to, when it comes to music, he believes in the 3 Bs. And he wasn't talking about Bach, Brahms, and Beethoven. He was talking about the Beach Boys, the Beatles, and Bacharach. So they're obviously big Beatle fans, and their guitar player brought our record to them. And they were much taken with it and decided to record Calling Occupants. I never met or spoke to either Richard or Karen.
As I said, that's a highlight. Now, Cathy, go for it and ask Terry whatever you want, because I've got a few questions.
Okay, so let's talk about your band and how you got started in your band, Terry. And how old were you when you got started with? Were you in other bands as well? So.
I had a huge record collection when I was a young fellow. I had all of Phil Spector's girl groups on 45, and I had the Four Seasons and the Beach Boys. And my uncle gave me the first LP I owned on my 10th birthday. That was Roy Orbison's Greatest Hits. So I was right into music and collecting records. And when the Beatles appeared on Ed Sullivan that night that so many of us saw, it occurred to me that I might be able to make music and not just love it and collect it. And I bought some drumsticks, and a year or two later, I got a drum kit and started a band with a friend of mine called JP and the 5 Good Reasons. I was 14. And then we had another band called the Trax, TRAX. That was, we did only Animals songs because of their album Animal Tracks. And then we had another band called The Innocence of Virgil Scott. None of these bands was very good, but Jesus, we had great names.
Yeah.
And then there was John Wallacechuck, who co-wrote Calling Occupants with me, was in KLAATU, of course. And he was in these other bands, the JP and the 5 Good Reasons and the Trax. We grew up together in the same neighborhood. Then we had a band in the early 70s doing all originals called Mud Cow. Don't ask, I don't know. and we played some of the KLAATU songs live. I remembered meeting Dee a few years earlier and called him up and said, hey, you want to, you know, he quit the bar business playing in cover bands in order to write music. And so the three of us formed a band with another fellow, and it lasted for about a year, I think. And it was hard to get gigs, so we had to learn Jumpin' Jack Flash and Proud Mary. And then I'm not really proud of playing Proud Mary, but there it is. And some other cover tunes, just in order to get gigs, because nobody would hire a band doing all originals. And I remember the last day we played together, we were playing at the Trenton Hotel in Trenton, Ontario. And back then you played 6 nights a week, and you did a Saturday afternoon matinee. Well, before our Saturday afternoon matinee, we had a meeting with Misty the stripper, and she went through our repertoire, our set list, and told us which songs of ours she was going to undress to. And when the meeting concluded, Dee turned to us and said, "That's it, I'm done." And the band dissolved. That we played that night, and that was it. And then KLAATU came up a couple of years later. John and Dee started working with Terry Brown of Rush fame, and they called me up because the session drummers wasn't always working out. And we made a record over the next 3 years and released it in August of '76. And then a journalist in Rhode Island, Providence, Rhode Island, got a hold of it. And because there was no names and no pictures, he concluded that this could be the Beatles recording under a fictitious name. Well, off we went. And the rumor went around the world. We were selling 20,000 records a day in the US. At one point, Capitol Records had every manufacturing plant, every Capitol plant pressing our record. Everything else went on hold. And then, a couple of years later, the world found out that we weren't the Beatles. We were just 3 guys from Toronto in Canada. And actually, the fellow that broke the story was a DJ in Washington. And the story goes that he went across the street to the Library of Congress and looked up the copyrights on our songs and found out there was no Lennon-McCartney involved. And so that's and then the backlash happened where the world thought we duped them. And we had no intention of doing that. What we were witnessing, watching Terry Brown record with the guys from Rush, that they were achieving a great deal of fame. And they couldn't even go to the 7-Eleven down the street without having to sign autographs and stuff like that. And privacy was becoming an issue. And that's okay when you're 17, but we were 25 years old at this point in our lives, very mature young men. And we wanted to maintain some of our anonymity, make zillions of dollars, and be wildly successful and famous, but still be able to have a life. I can't imagine what Brad Pitt's life is like. I'm a big fan, and if I saw him in a restaurant, I'd probably go say, "Hi, hey, nice to meet you." Ooh, who'd want to live that kind of life, And so that's why we decided on the anonymity. Plus, it was 1975. 1976. We were at the height of the disco era, on the verge of glam rock. So everything was hype, and it didn't seem to be about the music anymore. There wasn't a lot of substance to the music. It was more about the clothing you were wearing, and the dancers and ooh. So anyway, that's why we did that, and it came back to bite us in the ass.
Terry, I've got to say, this is a fascinating story, because what you got to understand is this interview is going to go to all the Beatle groups on Facebook. So it's very important now we get your story about the Beatle angle because whether it was the Beatles or wasn't the Beatles, it's really irrelevant at this point because you came out with the album first, it sort of died, and then it picked up when the rumor about the Beatles, maybe it's the Beatles, just took off, which isn't your fault, right? But that's just what it is. And plus the album was known as what? 347 EST. That was what? A banner on it or a number of the record? What's 347 EST?
Well, we took our name KLAATU from the emissary in the fabulous sci-fi movie The Day the Earth Stood Still, released in 1951. And Michael Rennie plays that character. In the movie, the spaceship lands in Washington Square at 3:47 Eastern Standard Time. And that's mentioned in the movie. And we thought, you know what? We've arrived. What could be a better title? 347 EST. So there you have
the other thing is Ringo put out that album where he comes out from the flying saucer and he's on the top of the Capitol building and it's got the KLAATU. So, I mean,
we were pissed. Yeah. He stole our thunder. Yeah.
How great is that? Because you got the Beatles going solo while you're doing this and someone thinks, hey, they got back together. And now because George Harrison's into all this Indian stuff and the moon and the sun and this and that, these guys got together and put out this album, the Beatles, mind you, with no one knowing, right? How cool is that?
That just fueled the fire, Ringo's Goodnight Vienna album.
That's timing, Terry. That wasn't meant to be. It just happened because what happens is, as I said, the album came out, nothing happened. Then all of a sudden, it took off out of your control. So, I mean, it's no one's fault.
No, it's no one's fault. But you know what? The bottom line is that people didn't compare us to the Beatles and say, boy, they sound like the Beatles, which is an intense compliment. They thought we were the Beatles. Now, a compliment doesn't get any better than that. Obviously, the music was damn good and the productions were top notch because people thought it was actually the Beatles. And so obviously we knew what the hell we were doing.
Well, that's great for your level of musicianship. And as I said, you came up the hard way and you got there. And sometimes some things are meant to be. And that was the right time and that was meant to be. And as I said, the hardcore rock fans, they didn't want disco. So they bought your album instead.
That was part of the timing.
Hoping that it's the Beatles.
Yeah.
You guys actually saved. Well, not saved. Well, you saved a lot of people from disco. I'll put it that way, and sold a lot of records.
It was a tough go competing with Shake Your Booty by KC and the Sunshine Band. I got to tell you.
And also Disco Duck. That's another one, right?
Yeah.
Can't forget Disco.
I got to tell you, Terry, this is a fascinating interview, right? Because I'm right on it. And I mean, I'm just saying as it is down the line, because you got to understand, I bought the first album. Being a baby boomer, I bought it and I thought it was the Beatles. And tell me the story now about the cover with the sun and it's got the little mouse. Tell me about that.
Say again?
Tell me about the story of the album cover that was done by Ted Jones, was it?
Yeah.
And then what happens is tell me about the sun and the little mouse.
Sure. That's John and I had been in a number of bands, like I said, and we started writing our own songs in 1969 together. And we talked about getting a band together and putting out a record of all original stuff and you know, the pipe dreams that young musicians have. And we decided early on that if we got to that point, we would use the sun as a logo, because not only is it a life-giving force that keeps everything alive on this planet, but it's part of the culture and the religious history of so many different societies. The Egyptians and the Assyrians, was a lot of sun worshiping going on in the ancient times. And our running joke was that it was free advertising because it comes up every day. The sun rises every day. So that's the free advertising. So what's interesting is that I began looking for an artist to do our album covers because we're not going to use any pictures. So the artwork has now become really important. With no pictures and no names. It's all about the image that we're going to portray. So every person I met and bumped into back in 1975, I asked them if they knew an artist and went to visit them. And I finally met a fellow who introduced me to Ted Jones. And Ted had finished his grade 13 in high school, but he never went to any classes except art class. And he had a 5-foot by 5-foot mural painting that he did that year as his graduation. That's what he worked on all year. And it was very reminiscent of the Axis Bold as Love cover with Hendrix on it. It was this 8 arms Hindu character, Hindu goddess, sitting on a lotus flower on a water set. It was just magnificent. And I remember calling up John and saying, hey, I found the artist. I got the guy. So we started Ted working on this, and we told him about the sun and everything. And the first pencil mock-up he did of our first album cover had the sun's face looking kind of like St. Nicholas, Santa Claus. In fact, it looked like Ernest Borgnine. Yeah. And we said, you know what, Ted, this is good. We like this, but I think we need something that is more ethereal, more what's the word I'm looking for? Asexual, you know, not male or female, but otherworldly, but still human.
Yeah, but it's very welcoming. The sun is like very welcoming and brings you in. You know what I mean? It's like happy.
It draws you right in. And he ended up doing the next mock-up he did, had this Mona Lisa type face, androgynous almost, that we loved and approved. And then we said, Ted, you know what? We need a recipient on the album cover for the warmth and the love and the power of the sun. Of course, we're the sun making this music. We need a recipient. We need somebody to listen to it. So Ted continues painting, and he brings it back to us, and he's painted a beaver on the cover. And we said, no, Ted, please. We don't want anyone to know we're Canadian. No beavers, buddy. And so we gave him a couple of Beatrix Potter books. And the next time I visited him and saw the painting, he had the mouse on the cover. Aww. And the mouse became our mascot. In fact, when we heard about the Beatle rumor, we were in England recording the London Philharmonic Orchestra at Olympic Studios. I got to tell you how cool that was. Olympic Studios.
Well, that's where the Rolling Stones recorded in that.
Yeah, King Crimson recorded there, Deep Purple. And the Beatles did one song there. They recorded Baby You're a Rich Man at Olympic. And so that was a really great moment. But somebody told me that 2 of the bass players, you know, the stand-up bass in the orchestra, they were talking in the lunchroom during a break. And one of them told the other that he saw a mouse run across the floor during the recording. Oh, we had a mouse.
Yeah, good.
Unbelievable. Cathy, you got any questions?
Well, I'm just looking now, and I'm noticing that you've got some new things going on as well. Right? You announced on November 5th the release of The Other Side. Can you talk a little bit about The Other Side, featuring 13 new recordings?
Yeah, 13. That is my 18th solo album. When the band broke up in 1982, 5 short years after being the Beatles, we couldn't get a record deal or a gig. And so we walked away. And I, in fact, walked all the way and quit the music business. I never quit making music, But I went back to the trade I had before and during the KLAATU days. I had a roofing business. So I got that all back up and running, and it's not that glamorous an occupation, but you can make a piss pot full of money. It's hard work, but somebody's got to do it, you know. And so I went back to that, and then I got married and built a house and had children and did all those things that you don't do when you're in a starving band, you know, living on the edge, being a starving artist. And but all this time I had a recording studio. So I had an 8-track tape deck, like an open reel 8 tracks, and I could make stuff. And then I bought my first computer, an Apple III in 1985 or so, and connected it to the computer so I could do MIDI work. So I've been on the forefront of recording technology pretty much all the time, a little bit behind, because it does get expensive. But I've never stopped writing and recording ever. I put my first solo album out in 1997, and this one here, The Other Side, is number 18. And there's some songs on it that I quite like.
That's great, Terry. I'm really impressed because the music's in you. And as I said, this story that you're telling to me and the Beatle fans out there, it has to be told. And as I said, I've seen other interviews of you on the net, some fantastic interviews. But that one where you're standing, tell everyone about that one with the speakers and you're speaking alone about the album. That is a great interview. I want people to see that on YouTube. Tell them about that one.
Yeah, that one's up on my YouTube channel, Terry Draper, at YouTube, whatever. And I was invited to come to the radio station in Toronto, the oldies station. It's called, I think, 97.3 Boom Radio, and be filmed and talk about our big song, Calling Occupants of Interplanetary Craft, and the writing of it and the creation of it. And I didn't realize what was going to happen. They sat me down in a chair beside a turntable, and there was a couple of cameras running, and he says, okay, put the record on and tell us about it while it's playing. It was like, so I grabbed the needle and put the thing on, and the crickets and all of that stuff starts playing, the scene in the woods. And by the way, that's not an owl. That is Terry Brown blowing across a half-consumed bottle of beer. Blowing it to make the sound of the owl. And so I think that's really fun information. Anyway, that starts playing, and I just started talking. And I think at one point I said, well, geez, what else can I say about this? I'm sort of at a loss for words. And then, oh, yeah, I remember this bit. We did this. Yeah, okay, whatever. And when we were done, I said to the guy, the program director, I said, can I do that again? Because I got stumbled a little bit. He said, you know what? That was fabulous. Just let it go. This was brilliant.
I thought it was perfect.
Yeah. And when I watched it later, when it got, posted or whatever, it was like, oh, geez, I nailed that, didn't I?
You know what's amazing? I just want to say, with all the rumors about the Beatles right through their albums, Paul's dead, then walking across the Abbey Road crossing, and one's meant to be dead, the other one's meant to be a funeral, whatever. And then you got the back of the Sgt. Pepper album where George is pointing to at 6 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the morning, right?
Yeah.
And you've got all these clues going around. And then, as I said, your album is another rumor. These Beatle fans thrive on rumors. I got to tell you something, Terry. I interviewed Leslie Cavendish. He was hairdresser to the Beatles in 1966. And we squashed the rumor that Paul was dead on one of my shows. And I said, Leslie, he's got a book out, Leslie Cavendish, called The Cutter's Edge. I said, tell everybody Paul isn't dead, is he? He never died in 66. Said, when you used to cut his hair, did his hair fall the way it fell? Did you find any features of him that changed? Nah. Well, I said, leave the man alone now. Let him have a good life. He didn't die in 67 and just move on. So, I mean, even with KLAATU, everybody move on. But if you want to remember the rumors, go back to 1975. If you're competing against disco, at least there's a hope there about rock.
Well, I'll tell you what, the thing about the Paul is dead rumor, what amazes me that not only did they find another musician who could play and sing and write fabulous songs, but he's just as handsome. How do you do that? That's a toughie.
William Campbell, what a name.
Billy Shears?
Yeah, that's right. Terry, I got to tell you, have you got any other links you want to tell everybody out there about your music? Or as I said, what's coming out now and where they can find you and see you on the net and hear some of your new music?
Well, I have a YouTube channel. It's Terry Draper, not too complicated to find. And my website is www.terrydraper.com. And, all of my albums are available there. And you can see all the videos. The last 3 albums, I've been working with a fellow who lives in Ontario near me, Jamie Grant. And he's a videographer, and he has made a video for every song on on all of the last 3 albums. So when I put 13 or 14 or 15 songs on an album, he makes a video for every one. And I just sort of let him run with it because he's an artist too, and I don't like stepping on toes. So I give him free reign. And so that's kind of cool that you can go to YouTube and see all these videos. And I have, others from before. And yeah, come and visit my website and go look at some videos and see what you think,
Well, I just want to thank you, Terry, for being on the show with us today because it's been fascinating. And I mean, if you blow my mind, you blow everyone else's out there, right? Because you got no idea the Beatles fan are thriving to find out. And people that actually weren't around in 1976 or when the first KLAATU album came out, go and listen to it. And you decide yourself, could that have been the Beatles?
Well, I do look a bit like John Lennon. You can see that plainly.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Cathy. Thank you, everyone out there, for watching GEMSTARS. We've got some fantastic guests. And let me tell you, Terry, you are a music legend, all right? Just so you know.
Yeah. Thank you. I enjoyed being taunted on your show. It's been fun, my friend.
Thank you. Don't forget, go out there and buy Goodnight Vienna by Ringo Starr, where he's coming out of the spaceship with KLAATU as well. And as I said, pick up a copy of KLAATU and watch the cover and look at the mouse, okay? We love you. See you soon on GEMSTARS.
Cheers.
Cheers. Just 1 minute. We got to... Yeah.